My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 32 years old. 3 days before the most important interview of my career, my own mother called my hiring manager and told her I had a criminal record. I don't. My father backed her up, sent a follow-up email, said I was unreliable, said I'd embarrassed the family before and I'd embarrass the company too. The interview was canceled. I sat in my apartment at 11:47 at night, offer letter already mentally drafted in my head, watching that email arrive on my phone, and I didn't throw anything. Didn't call them screaming. Didn't even cry. Because what my parents didn't know was that the CEO of that company was about to change. And the person who replaced him was someone who'd been watching me work for 3 years. And 2 years later, the same company that rejected me sent my sister an offer letter. She had to come through me to get it. Before I go any further, if this story already has your chest tight, take a second to like and subscribe and drop your location and your local time in the comments. I genuinely love knowing where in the world you're listening from right now. I'm Marcus. This is the story of how my own parents tried to torch my career to keep me small, and how the industry they tried to lock me out of became the one I now help run. Let's go back 4 years. August 2020. I was 28, a senior product manager at a mid-size SaaS company in Atlanta. 2 years of back-to-back promotions. Team of 6 reporting to me. The kind of upward trajectory that makes recruiters reach out without you asking. One of them did. Carla Simmons, a headhunter from Chicago, reached out on LinkedIn in late July. She was recruiting for a director of product role at Elevate Systems, a Series C startup that was making noise in the HR tech space. 40 employees, growing fast, fully remote, salary nearly double what I was making. She said a colleague had referred me. She wouldn't say who. I went through 5 rounds of interviews. 5. Every single one felt like it was building toward something real. The VP of product told me in round 4, "Honestly, Marcus, you're the best we've seen for this role." His exact words. I wrote them down. Round 5 was the final. A panel, the CEO, the CPO, and 1 board member, scheduled for a Tuesday at 2:00 p.m. Central. The Monday before that Tuesday, my parents called to remind me about my sister Renee's birthday brunch. I'd forgotten. Not entirely. I'd marked it in my calendar for Sunday, looked at the date wrong, and assumed it was the following week. It was that Sunday, the day before my final interview. I told my mother I'd be there. She asked why I sounded distracted. I made the mistake of telling her about the interview. She said, "What company?" I told her. "You should cancel," she said. I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. To understand what happened next, you need to understand my parents. Dennis and Gloria Webb. Both retired educators, both lifelong Atlantans, both deeply certain they have always known what was best for their children and completely unwilling to consider evidence to the contrary. My father spent 31 years as a high school principal. He ran a tight ship. Order, discipline, reputation. He cared enormously about how things looked from the outside. My mother taught 2nd grade for 25 years. She is warm when she wants to be. She is also the most effective emotional manipulator I have ever encountered in my life, and I say that having managed difficult stakeholders in corporate environments for 6 years. They loved me in the way some parents love their children, possessively, conditionally, and with the implicit understanding that love could be withdrawn if I made choices they didn't endorse. Renee was different. My younger sister by 3 years. She was the easy child. Agreeable, local, never rocked the boat. Went to Georgia State, stayed in Atlanta, dated men my mother approved of, came to every Sunday dinner. I left for Chicago for my first job at 23. That was the first thing they never fully forgave me for. That Sunday brunch. Renee's birthday brunch was at my parents' house. Backyard, catered, about 30 people. Family, friends, church members, a few of Renee's college friends. I drove up from Atlanta the morning before my interview. 5 hours. I planned to drive back that night, sleep, review my notes, be sharp for the 2 p.m. call. It was a nice brunch. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Renee was happy, the food was good, people were warm. But around 1 p.m., I told my mother I needed to leave by 3 to make the drive back. She said, "The party doesn't end until 5. I said, "I know, but I have an early morning." My father appeared from across the yard, the way he always does when my mother's expression changes, like a radar system. He said, "You're leaving your sister's birthday party early for a job interview." I said, "It's a final round. It's tomorrow afternoon, but I need to prepare." He said, "You already have a job." I said, "This one is significantly better." He said, "Your sister only turns 29 once." I said, "I know, and I've been here since 10 this morning." My mother said very quietly, "Stay until 5, Marcus. It's one night." I stayed until 5. I drove back to Atlanta. I got home at 10:30 p.m. I reviewed my notes until 1 a.m. I set 2 alarms. I thought that was the end of it. Monday, 9:17 a.m. An email from Carla, the recruiter. Subject line, "Ray, final interview update." "Hi Marcus, I want to be upfront with you because I respect your time. Elevate has decided to pause the process for your candidacy. I'm told there was a concern raised externally about your background that they need to review. I don't have details. I'm sorry. I know this isn't the news you were hoping for." I read it 3 times. A concern raised externally. I called Carla. She picked up on the second ring. She sounded uncomfortable. I asked what concern. She said, "Marcus, I really can't get into it. I'm sorry." I asked if it was a background check issue. She paused, then said, "It wasn't through official channels. Someone reached out directly to the hiring team." Someone. I sat there for a minute, then I asked, "Was it a family member?" The pause that followed was its own answer. I didn't call my parents that day. I needed 24 hours before I could speak to either of them without saying things I couldn't take back. I spent the day documenting. I printed my clean background check. I'd run one 2 months earlier for a different application. I pulled every performance review from my current job. I wrote a 2-page summary of my career timeline, client wins, promotions, references. I didn't know exactly what my mother had said. I didn't know what lie she'd told, but I knew it was her. The next day I called. She answered on the first ring. "Marcus, I was going to call you." "What did you tell them?" I said. Silence. "I just had some concerns," she said, "about whether the role was right for you, whether you were ready. I didn't want you to embarrass yourself." "You told them I had a criminal record." She didn't deny it. She said, "I said there had been some issues in your past. I said they might want to look more carefully." "There are no issues. I have never been arrested. I have never had so much as a speeding ticket in 5 years. She said, "You don't know how these companies work, Marcus. If it wasn't the right fit, you sabotaged a director-level interview. Do you understand what that is? Do you understand that's potentially illegal?" My father got on the line. "You need to lower your voice." I said, "You need to stay out of things that don't concern you." He said, "Your career concerns us. You were already making good money. This company, we'd never heard of them. You would have been miserable." I said, "You have never once in my life asked me what would make me happy." They said I was being dramatic. My mother cried. My father told me I was ungrateful. I hung up. I want to tell you something about the months that followed. I grieved that opportunity the way you grieve something that can't be explained to most people, because it sounds, from the outside, like a professional inconvenience. But it wasn't just a job. That role would have meant financial independence from a city where everything reminded me of what my family expected me to be. It would have meant building something. It would have meant being chosen for exactly who I was by people who had no stake in who I'd been at 17. Instead, I went back to my desk on Wednesday morning and managed my team of 6 and acted like nothing had happened. I kept minimal contact with my parents, holidays only, surface-level calls. I told my therapist what had happened. She said, "They neutralized the threat." I said, "What threat?" She said, "You leaving, you succeeding somewhere they couldn't take credit for it." I sat with that for a long time. 6 months later, the CEO of Elevate Systems resigned. Carla emailed me out of nowhere. "I know this is a strange message. The leadership at Elevate has changed significantly. The person who made the call on your candidacy is no longer there. The new CPO is someone I think you should talk to. Would you be open to a call?" The new CPO was a woman named Diana Osei. I learned later she'd been one of 5 people Carla had referred candidates to over the years. Diana had rebuilt the entire product org from scratch when she stepped in. She was looking for a director of product to be her second in command. We had a call. It lasted 40 minutes. At the end, she said, "I've heard your name before. One of my former colleagues mentioned you 2 years ago as someone to watch. I should have called sooner." I asked who the colleague was. She smiled and said, "Someone who thought you got a raw deal." March 2021. I started at Elevate Systems as Director of Product, fully remote, salary that made my Atlanta apartment feel like a joke. Within a year, I was VP. I did not tell my parents about the job for 3 months after I started. When I finally told my mother, she said, "Is this that same company from before? I thought they had concerns about you." I said, "They had concerns about false information someone gave them. They corrected course." She said, "Well, I hope it works out." That was it. I didn't tell her about the salary, didn't tell her about the team I was building, didn't tell her about the product launches, the board presentations, the industry profile a trade publication ran in October. I'd learned something important. Information given to my parents was information handed to people who would use it to manage me, so I stopped giving it. The part about Renee. Here's what I need you to understand about my sister. Renee is smart. Genuinely, quietly, stubbornly smart in the way that people who spent their whole lives being agreeable sometimes are all of it going inward, underdeveloped, waiting. She spent her late 20s in a marketing coordinator role at a mid-size healthcare company in Atlanta. She was good at it, too good for it. She knew it and didn't know what to do with knowing it. In 2022, she started reaching out to me more. Not about the family, about work. She'd ask how I structured product roadmaps. She'd send me industry articles and ask what I thought. She started taking online courses, UX, product strategy, data analysis. I saw what was happening before she named it. One Sunday she called and said, "I think I want to move into product management." I said, "I know." She laughed, then said, "Is that obvious?" I said, "You've been circling it for 2 years. What's stopping you?" She said, "I don't have the experience, I don't have the credentials. I'm 29. Starting over feels." I said, "You're not starting over, you're redirecting." We spent 3 months doing informal mentorship calls. I helped her build a portfolio from her existing work. She reframed campaigns she'd run as product experiments. I helped her write a case study about a process she'd overhauled at her company that had cut fulfillment errors by 34%. She was good. Actually good, not good for someone starting out good. In early 2023, we had an opening at Elevate for an associate product manager. Junior role, strong growth track. I did not offer it to her. I told her it existed. I told her to apply through the standard process. I told her I would not advocate for her internally until she had cleared the first 2 rounds on her own merit. She said, "You're serious?" I said, "If you want this to mean something, you have to earn it the same way." She applied, cleared round 1, cleared round 2. Round 3 was with me. I want to tell you about that interview. We sat on a video call, my sister and me, professionally. I asked her every difficult question I ask any candidate. I pushed back on her case study. I challenged her assumptions on user research. I gave her a live product scenario and asked her to walk me through her reasoning in real time. She didn't lean on our relationship once, didn't reference our calls, didn't assume familiarity would protect her. She just answered, clearly, directly, with genuine conviction. At the end, I said, "Last question. Why do you want this specific role?" She thought for a moment, then said, "Because I spent 3 years being good at something that didn't ask much of me. I don't want to do that again. I want to be somewhere that requires me to actually grow." I said, "Thank you, we'll be in touch." She got the offer 4 days later. From Diana, not from me. And then our parents found out. My mother called me on a Thursday evening. She had that voice. The one that sounds like concern, but is load-bearing something else entirely. "Renee tells me she got a new job," she said. "Yes," I said. "She says it's at your company." "Yes." "Marcus, did you get her that job?" "No. She applied, interviewed, and was selected by our CPO." Pause. "But you knew about the opening." I told her it existed, same as I'd tell anyone. My mother said, "You could have just brought her in, given her a chance. You didn't have to make her go through all of that." I said, "She's a professional, she didn't need a favor. She needed a fair shot." "You're her brother. And she's my colleague now. Those aren't the same relationship." My father got on the line. "You run this department." "I'm VP of product, yes." "Then she reports to you." "Indirectly." He said, "That's a lot of power for someone who doesn't return his parents' calls." There it was. I said, "We're going in circles. I'm glad for Renee. You should be too." My father said, "I just think it's interesting. You spend years complaining that we interfered in your career, and now you're in charge of your sisters." I said, I'm not in charge of it. I helped her get access to it. That's a different thing. It's the thing you should have done for me. Silence. Then my mother said, we did what we thought was right. I said, I know, that's the problem. I kept it short, said goodbye, hung up. A word about what happened with Renee in those first 6 months. She was good. Genuinely earn it good in ways that had nothing to do with me. She shipped a feature that reduced onboarding drop-off by 22%. She built relationships across the engineering team. She asked hard questions in product reviews without apology. At her 6-month check-in with Diana, Diana told her, "You're ahead of where most APMs are at this stage." Renee texted me that night. Just a screenshot of the message and a single line. "You were right. It means more this way." I stared at that for a while. Then I wrote back, "I know." The dinner. My parents planned a family dinner in October 2023, framed as a celebration of Renee's new job. My mother called it that explicitly, a celebration. She wanted the whole family there. I almost didn't go. My therapist said, "You don't have to go, but you might want to think about what you're protecting yourself from versus what you're avoiding." I went. My parents' house in Atlanta. October evening, warm still. Dining room table with the good plates. My aunt and uncle there, 2 cousins, Renee's boyfriend at the time. Dinner was fine until my father said, over dessert, "It's a good thing Marcus pulled some strings. Not everyone gets an in like that." Renee put down her fork. I watched her decide something. She said, "Dad, Marcus didn't pull strings, I applied. I interviewed 5 times. I got the offer because I earned it." My father said, "Of course, but having a brother in leadership." Renee said, "He told me to apply through the normal process and that he wouldn't advocate for me until I'd cleared round 2 on my own. He was harder on me in my interview than any other interviewer." My mother said, "Renee, we're just saying you're lucky." Renee said, "I'm not lucky. I worked for this. I spent a year building a portfolio, taking courses, rewriting my entire professional narrative. Marcus helped me figure out how to frame it. He didn't hand me anything." Quiet at the table. My father looked at me. "You didn't advocate for her." "Not until she'd made it to the final round on her own," I said. "Same as I do for anyone." "She's your sister." "She's also a professional. I respected her enough to treat her like one." My mother looked genuinely confused by this, like the concept was arriving in a language she hadn't been taught. She said, "Marcus, after everything, we just thought you'd take care of your family." I set down my fork. I said, "You sabotaged my final interview for a director role so I'd stay in a city and a life that was easier for you to manage. And then you showed up to a celebration dinner for the career Renee built herself, to take credit for it and call it luck. I don't know what version of taking care of family that is, but it's not one I recognize." My father said, "You need to let that go." I said, "I will, but not tonight." I thanked Renee for dinner. I hugged her at the door. She held on a second longer than usual. She said quietly, "Thank you for doing it the right way." I drove back to my hotel. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. Not angry, something closer to resolved. What happened after? I kept contact with my parents, minimal and structured. Calls once a month, brief, civil, about nothing of substance. Renee and I grew closer than we'd ever been. Working alongside each other, even at a distance, even in different lanes. It built something that years of family dinners hadn't. She got promoted to PM after 14 months. Full product manager. Her own roadmap, her own team relationship, her own quarterly goals. On the day her promotion was announced internally, she sent me a voice note. I'll keep what she said private, but I listened to it twice, and the second time I had to put my phone down for a minute. My parents heard about the promotion through Renee. My mother called me. She said, "Your sister is doing so well." I said, "She is." She says you're a good boss. I try to be. A pause. Then my mother said, "I'm sorry about that interview. I was scared of losing you." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I said, "I know, Mom, but you almost did anyway." She didn't respond to that. We talked for a few more minutes about nothing in particular, and then we said goodbye. I don't know if that was an ending or a beginning. I'm not sure it matters. Where we are now. Renee has been at Elevate for 18 months. She's the kind of PM that other PMs ask for advice. She's being considered for a senior PM role that has nothing to do with me. Diana runs that process. We have lunch on video call every Wednesday. We talk about work. We talk about our parents. We talk about what it means to build a life your family didn't design for you. Last month she said, "Do you think they'll ever actually get it?" I said, "I don't know, but I stopped needing them to." She thought about that. Then she said, "I think I'm almost there." I said, "You've got time." Some people ask if I regret not going harder at my parents. Not involving lawyers, not making noise publicly, not burning it down. I don't. What I wanted wasn't revenge. It was distance. And then, quietly, it was proof, not to them, but to myself, that what they took from me was recoverable. It was. Some opportunities are closed by other people. Some doors get locked from the outside before you ever reach them. But other doors, the ones you build yourself, the ones you help someone else walk through, those don't close the same way. I know that now. And so does my sister.